So today we are sending emails automatically. The chapter talks about sending them with Outlook. We're going to look at sending them directly as if we're using Google Mail. We'll probably actually use BYU's mail server because I know you all have a BYU account. Pretty sure you all have a Google account too. That's a little more complicated, but we'll talk about that. And so go ahead and download the workbook. There's two things to download. There's the workbook, and then there's this message, email message.txt. The trouble is if you click on that, your browser is probably just going to open it. We need to get that file downloaded, so here's what you're going to do. You're going to right-click the link, and you're going to choose Save Link As, or whatever your browser says, like copy link locate. I don't know what it is, but you want to save that file. Tell it to save that file. And just make sure you put those two files in the same location. So the workbook and the text file are in the same place. Did I download this already? Maybe I didn't download this myself. Right here, send it. Send BYU. So the data, so here's the context for today's assignment. Enable content. You've just been hired, or you have probably an internship. For this assignment, it's probably an internship. You have an internship working for the National Highway Transportation Safety Bureau, and you're responding to complaints. It turns out you got a complaint about a car that you own, or that you've driven in or something. You can send a complaint to the National Highway Transportation Safety Bureau, and they will receive your complaint. And I guess if they get enough complaints about a certain thing, they might look into it as being a serious problem. And so that's what these are. So this is data I downloaded from some government website, I think around 2000. I don't think we have very recent data here, 1999, 2000. Okay. But here's Evelyn Sabo. I don't think that's really her name. I think I had to go find names somewhere else. The person who made the report really did have a name, but they didn't publish that. But this is really the right city. So from Finksburg, Maryland, she sent a letter in on, or maybe they received it on February 12th, 2000. It was a complaint about a Daimler Chrysler Corporation Jeep Cherokee 1990. And the failure date was in 1992. So this is interesting. It failed in 1992. She finally gets around to writing the letter in 2000, like 8 years later. You know, some people have issues with procrastination. I understand that. Injured. There were 2 people injured as a result of this. Here's the summary. Paint is peeling off in sheets. Yeah, the brakes is the next part. We're going to complain about everything about this car. The brakes don't slow the vehicle consistently. Sometimes when you push on the brake, it's like you don't have any brake at all, but and then it's truncated. So I'm not sure if the government truncated the data or if I truncated the data, but we don't get all of it here. When pulling into a turn lane, went to apply the brakes and the pedal went all the way to the floor. The ABS failed during the loss of control and accident. So anyway, that's it. So here's the idea. You have been assigned all these cases. These are now your cases to look into. And so step 1 is you want to let these folks know that you are on the case. Fortunately, you've got emails for all of them. Now, be careful with these email addresses. All these email addresses come to me. So don't, we're going to see how to automatically send email addresses, automatically send emails. Don't send them all here. They'll come to my inbox and I'll have fun deleting them. But so what you probably want to do is you want to plug in, at least you're like the first 5, change this to an email address that you have access to. That way when it works, you can see that it worked, right? It'll send an email to an account that you can check instead of sending one that I can check.
What account are we going to use to send emails?
We'll use your BYU account. Okay. So you put in your Gmail account or whatever other account you might have. I can always tell when somebody is working on one of these old examples, like they're now at work somewhere and they got to send emails. Let me get that old example out from VBA class. Because I'll get like 100 emails before they realize, oh, whoops, I got to plug the right email address. I know who they're from, I'll email them back. Hey, any questions on the email? I could help, if you need. Struggling a little bit there. Good news is you got to execute. Mission accomplished. Okay, So that's the idea. Now, we should have here also, let's take a look at that file. What was that file called? Email text? Email message. Email message.txt. I'm just going to open it with Notepad. That should do the trick. So the way this is configured is the first line of this file is going to be the subject of the email that we're sending. And then, dear first name, when I heard about the trouble you had with your 1990 Jeep Cherokee, I was deeply troubled. I've recently been assigned to your case, and I want to give you my contact information to let you know that National Highway Transportation Bureau is currently evaluating the Jeep Cherokee. Let's see, what's model? What's make? Oh, the Cherokee, and then this is going to be like brakes for a possible recall. If you would like to provide any more information about the incident that you experienced back in 1992, don't hesitate to contact me. Sincerely, agent name, safety analyst, National Highway Transportation Bureau, and telephone. Okay. So, we have a template, and we're going to send this out. Are there other ways to do like this? An email merge? Yeah, like Word will do this for you. And so this is kind of an easy context, but there might be other reasons why you need to send off an email. For example, you could be doing something that's some kind of long-running process, like getting data from someplace and inserting it into a database, like the project that's due tonight. Speaking of which, how's that coming? How's that project coming?
Download it.
So I have downloaded the file, so the first step's completed. 10%. Remember, you can buy 10%. You can buy a day for 10%. You might want that.
How much is this transaction?
Yeah.
Is it a Coke, or how do I buy it?
You just turned in late.
Oh, okay.
You just turned in a day late. And bring a Coke to my office.
That kind of goes into the email.
All right. Okay. But the point is, maybe you've got something that runs like for a long time. Here's one thing that the student. Did I tell you the student about the student that bought like expensive instruments and resold them on?
Oh yes.
On KSL, yes. This is what he did. So he had a computer that just kind of sat there and watched KSL every 10 minutes and checked to see anything new posted on KSL that I might be interested in. And when something came up, it sent him, actually, in that case, it was a text message, which we'll see how to do as well. It's actually very similar to sending an email. We'll see how that works. So that's probably a more realistic thing, although for class, it's not nearly as interesting waiting around for something to happen to send you an email. So you'll get the feeling for this, but you can apply these tools, of course, in other contexts. All right, so we've got that email message there. We have the set of data, the set of folks we need to send messages to. So now let's just go ahead and get down to it. So send BYU Gmail. Oh, I was going to change the name of this module. Darn it, I forgot to. Let's first take a look at module 1. That's probably the one that's open when you open the workbook. So this is the subprocedure we're going to create today, send mail. I declared a bunch of variables because I didn't want to type all these in class today. It's a lot of variables to have to type. And the truth is we might not need them all, but if we do, they're already there for us. So just a bunch of variables declared so that we can use them, and then we will start with the process of actually then sending some email. But first, let's take a look at the code that sends the emails. The code is, it's not too complex, but it involves a couple of objects that we're not yet really familiar with. One of them is a message object, and one of them is a configuration object. So for tonight's assignment, the project that's due tonight, you have this idea where you have to connect onto a server. You have a connection that you have to open, and then with that connection, you say either request information or you put information to the database. We have two different objects that are two different. I guess two objects if you're bringing the data back. So we have a connection, and then we do something with that connection. It's the same idea here. We have to get connected to a mail server, and that's our configuration object. CDO stands for, I think it's Common Data Object. Well, I'm not positive. So we have to get connected up to a mail server, an email server. Like we have to connect to a database server to get it to do our bidding. In this case, now we have to connect to an email server and get it to do our bidding. So we have to know some configuration information about working with the email server. And then we have a message that we're going to use that connection to send the message. And so this first block is just what it takes to get set up to the email server. So there are a couple of different ways to send, a couple of different approaches that we can use to send email. The only one I've ever used is this one here. It's where the send using parameter is equal to 2. And so that's send using port. We're going to specify a host name and a port number, and we're going to use that to communicate to an email server. If you're working with an Exchange server instead of an SMTP server, this would be another number. I think it would be 3. I'm not sure what one is, but that's what this means. This is just saying this is the approach that we're going to use to communicate with this server. So the next one then, the SMTP server, this is the host name of the server we're going to interact with. And so for us, it's going to be gateway.byu.edu. That is just, that's the name of a computer. Now remember, host names ultimately get translated into IP addresses. Let's choose, let me just open up a command prompt. So I can ping gateway.byu.edu, and that resolves at 10.18.21.240. And so the 10.network is like private networking, so this is something happening right here from inside of BYU. In fact, the gateway.byu.edu mail server will not respond to requests made off of campus. Kind of a security thing. It's saying, listen, you're using our email server, you be on campus if you really want to send this. If you need to be off campus and send mail, you're not going to do it with gateway.byu.edu. You can do it with Gmail, and we'll take a look at that one as well today. You should be able to do that as well. And so this is just getting us to a particular machine to be able to interact. Port. So, did we talk about ports when we talked about database, connecting to databases? Here's the idea, is that the IP address or the host name gets me to a particular machine, but that machine could do lots of different services. A single machine could be a web server, an email server, it could be a time server, a database server, it could have a couple of different database servers. It could be serving FTP and SFTP and SSH. Lots of services could be available on that one machine. And so when I'm going to communicate with a machine in Internet Protocol, it's not enough just to know the machine I'm talking to. I have to know which channel to talk to it on, and that channel is called a port. How many ports are there? Tens of thousands. Just an arbitrary number that we use to say that's where that service is listening to be able to connect. In fact, anytime I'm even looking at a web page of any kind, it requires both a host name and a port number to get to that particular machine. Watch this. If I'm going to go to byu.edu, byu.edu, I'm going to put on the end of that :80. That's how I specify the port that I'm talking to. That's the default port. If I don't put a port, I'm just going to put :80 on it. And that works just fine. It communicated with that, and that server said, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. I'm going to give you something else. I'm going to redirect you somewhere else and take me somewhere else. So, but now I'm going to change that to port 81. And the browser's going to go, I am trying to talk to some service at byu.edu on port 81. I'm waiting for it to come back. I sent the request. I'm listening for a response. The response hasn't come yet. And will it come? No, because there's nobody listening on 81. There's no service listening on port 81. And so it takes both a host name and a port to be able to get to the right, to be able to talk to that service. Okay? And so that's what we're doing here. We're specifying. Oh, I'm just curious. I'd be surprised if there's a web server running on this machine. There could be. No, there's not. So we tell it this gets us to a particular machine. This gets us to a particular channel on that machine that service is listening for connections to be made. And now we tell it what kind of authentication we want. The one here means basic authentication. We give it our net ID and our password. And then the question is, are we going to use a secure socket layer? And that is false for this. It's true for working with Gmail, but false for here. So this is just getting us all configured. And then we update the configuration. And when we update that configuration, I think that's when it actually makes the connection. Although I'm not positive about that. Okay, but that's getting us configured to the server. Now we have to send a message. So, incidentally, this is a sub-procedure. We're passing in several things. Among the things we're passing it the net ID and the password. That supplement knows what the net ID and the password is. So we pass it a net ID and a password, and it's reading that. We'll also have to tell it an email address we're sending the message to, who we're sending it from. Is that true? Send from. Who we're sending it from. Net ID, password, and presumably we have to have a body here. Oh yeah, we're sending the subject, and we're sending the body. So all this stuff gets passed in. Optionally, we can send it a path to a file that we want to attach. So we use the net ID and the password to get configured to the server. And now, here's an IP, or here's an email address we're sending it to. Here's the email address it's coming from. This is the subject of the message. Here's the body of the message. You'll notice there's a text body. There's also an HTML body. What's the difference? We send an HTML body, then we can make it fancy with pictures and fonts and colors and everything. And so we're not going to do that in class today, but realize if you wanted to get fancy, you could pass in HTML. We're going to pass in just a text body. The truth is, you can specify them both. And then, depending on how the web client is configured, it will show one or the other depending on what the preferences are. Message sender, oh, that's coming from my name. Probably should put your own name in there. I guess it wouldn't hurt my feelings too much if you had my name in there. And then, if we've supplied an attachment, we're going to call the addAttachment method of the message object and pass in the path to that. And it will actually attach the file onto that. Can you attach more than one file to a message? Yeah, you just have to call addAttachment multiple times. This particular procedure, or this function, is only going to let you pass one. If you want to do more, you'll have to modify the way the function works. And then, here's what happens. We now say that the message object has a configuration property, and we're going to connect up our whole configuration object to the message, and then we're going to send the message. Here's what we say. If there's an error, just continue going, send the message. If the error number is 0, what does that mean? No error. And so if there's no error, we're going to just return true. This is the name of the procedure. It's going to return true. Otherwise, we're going to return false. And by the way, we'll print out some kind of message so that you as a developer can see what's the problem. At least, what are we trying to do and what failed.
You put them on different lines because that's how it'll show up.
Say the question again.
The debug.print, you put those on different lines so that they're printed on different lines as opposed to just doing one big long message of saying,
yes,
I'm sending error, this is what
it's on different lines because when I say debug.print, it prints this out and then it also prints a carriage return at the end. So it will feed me to the next line and come onto all different lines. That's the process. So the truth is, we should just be able to call this procedure kind of like directly here from the immediate window. Question mark, send BYU mail, send to, you can send a message to yourself. This would be a string, that's an email address. Allen at, really sure I want to publish this email address to the world. Someplace. .com. Send from. Now this should be my BYU address. Gov at BYU. One I think is already published to the world somewhere. Net ID. Again, you put your own net ID in here. Password. Not my real password. And then some message or some subject. So of course this really isn't going to work, but I'm hoping that someone will do it in class and they can verify that it worked. So if I try that, I should get a failure. Problem sending the message, rejected one or more of the recipient addresses, and there's the information. So, does that work for anybody? Anyone try to get to where it actually went all the way through? We'll do it together in a more detailed example. But. Really? Question?
So I have like a email alias, but I don't have an actual address that I can receive or send emails from. So would that not work? Does that make sense?
Oh no, I think you should be. The question is, I've got an alias, that I created, which is what this is. I think this is all this is going to be. Is this going to be the email address that's shown as who it's from? But what you specify here is your net ID. You do have a net ID, don't you?
Yeah, but I just didn't think I had an actual account. I thought they didn't want me to actually be able to send an email from
That's interesting. This is the first time I've tried to use the BYU server in a long, long time. And it's because things have gotten a little more complex sending with Gmail. So this will be interesting to find out. Let's pause the recording.
It worked for me. It worked for me.
And it worked for some other folks here? Okay, so it looks like you do. You can actually route mail out, even though they don't. Apparently somebody doesn't want you to know that. You can. Cool. Okay, so let's go ahead then and work the example and get this going. This page isn't working. Oh yeah, gateway.byu, there's no web server. Okay, so this then is this is going to be our template. So let's start off by reading that template in. Actually, let's start off by getting a loop that will iterate across these records. So this is, straightforward. By now, I'm hoping this is almost second nature to you to be able to write a loop like this. So we're here inside send mail, down below all the dim statements. We've got r as an integer, r equals 2, do until, let's see, do we have a worksheet? We have S as a worksheet. Let me go ahead and bind that onto the right worksheet. The name of my worksheet is letter, it's data. So let me bind that to the S variable. Set S equal to sheets data. Do until S dot cells, row number R, column number 2, dot value is equal to a 0x string. Next, R equals R plus 1. Debug.print, and if we print this off, what do we have there in column 2? Whoops, not next, but loop. Then we should see that that runs through all of that data. So that looks like the loop is working. Of course, we don't just want to print that off. We want to send a message each time. And so let's get there. Actually, before we send the message, it might be a good idea to collect the username and the password that we're going to use to authenticate. In this case, the net ID and the password. So let me look here at, there's our form built into this workbook called form password. There it is. It says Gmail account and Gmail password. This thing is wired to work with Gmail. So we're going to make some modifications to this, not as a form, but we'll do it just through code as we're working. So let me take a look at this. Don't change anything here. I just need to make this a little bit bigger. And view Project Explorer properties window. All right, so we've got a label here called label 4. I think we just want that to be invisible because this is going to be a net ID. We've got to collect a net ID and a password. So here I've got label 4, I've got label 3, and I've got label 5. So 3, 4, and 5 are in this order. And so I want this to say net ID, I want this to say nothing, and I want this to say password. So let's go ahead and make those changes in our code. This is kind of an interesting little example of making a form that's a little bit more reusable. So the name of the form is FRM password. And there is a label 3. I want label 3's caption property to equal net ID. Or maybe BYU net ID. So I've got 3, 4, and 5. 4 I want to be nothing. And 5 I want to say BYU password. So that'll get the form configured. Now let's show the form. Remember that when I show the form, it halts the execution of this procedure until the form is dismissed. So that'll bring the form up, wait until the user types in what they're going to type in. I'll press OK or cancel, and then we'll take a look at what it is. Now I think I have a variable already made for password. Oh yeah, UN and PW. So we've got username and password. And we probably should modify that a little bit more, but we'll go with this. So let's say this. If frm password .txt password is blank, it's equal to a zero-length string. If they've given us a zero-length string in the password, they're not serious about this. Let's just get out of here. Exit, sub. Otherwise, we'll say our variable username is equal to frm password .txt account and password PW
I have a question.
is equal to frm password .txt password .text. Question?
Yes. So before we use forms, we use a procedure for the functions of the forms. With this one, it's going to show the form, and it's not going to execute the rest of the code until we do something in the form.
That's right. When we show this form, it's going to pause the rest of this code. It's going to pause right here until this form is dismissed, either by closing or pressing OK.
Okay.
If the user closes that form with an X, then it's going to clear off the whole form. And so the password's going to be blank. So if they close it that way, then we'll know, oh, they canceled and they want to stop the process. All right, just to kind of make sure we've got this part working, debug.print username, comma, password. So now if we run this, it's going to spool off all of these what are they, first names, first or last names, but it should start by putting the username and the password. So I'm going to clear my immediate window. I can see what's going on. I'll run this code. Let's put in here now netid password. Going to
Do we want to change the title of that box that says Google credentials?
oh, does it really? Yeah. So now it's gotten those values back. So apparently the title of that form wasn't paying attention, but the title of that form says Google credentials. So we can change the caption of the form itself to BYU credentials. And of course, this isn't critical. It's all just dressing, window dressing. We're showing the password. It's blank. We shouldn't do anything. Let me give that a shot and make sure that works. And then I'll take the question. I'll run this. What happens if I hit the X? Didn't do anything. I'm not sure if I've got the cancel set up to clear out the password or not. This is how I would normally do something like this. But if I put some stuff in here, hit cancel, yeah, same thing. So like if we look at that cancel button, we'd see that what that cancel button does before it closes. Maybe it's unloading. Nope, it's clearing out the password before it hides the form. Question?
Yeah, so this is the email that is attached to our BYU account, right? So if it's our Gmail that we decided to use as a primary email account, is that what it's going to be running through?
Oh, no. So the question is, hey, I'm using some Gmail account as my primary account, and as far as I know, things are just getting forwarded there. So the answer is no. We're actually going to use your credentials, your net ID and your password, to authenticate against the BYU mail server and send out mail. It looks like you're authorized to do that, even though they're not having you keep track of it. They're not keeping track of your mail for you. They're having saying, look, get some email somewhere else. We're not doing it for you. But I think you're still authenticated. I think your credentials still allow you to send mail out through gateway.byu.edu. So yeah, you're going to provide your net ID and your password. Okay, it looks like I closed my code. Okay, so now I've got the information that I need. See, one thing that we're missing here is the from. Why don't we just hard code? We'll hard code that when we send the message. But next, now we've got to get the message ready. So I think we've got something called template and something called message. So let's go ahead and read in the template before we get to the loop. Template. Let's do it this way. We need to be able to read a text file. I think we've got a day coming up still on dealing with text files. So let's go through this without spending too much time talking about the syntax. We are going to open. We have to put the full path to some file. Now, hopefully, that text file is in the same location as your workbook, because that way we can say this workbook dot path concatenated with backslash and then the name of the template, which is, I forgot, email message.txt, email underscore message. .txt. As, and then we give it a number. Number 1 will be just fine. It's the only file we're working with. Close number 1. And now, in between the open and the close, we want to read the data out of that file. So template equals input. You may have to look up the syntax on this. I think it's input number 1, comma, and then we tell it how many characters we want to read from that file. Fortunately, there's a function All right, pause for a moment while I look at the syntax. I want line input. Line input. Stack Overflow should be good for this. Let's put the line input. Oh, there we go. Just no number on the number 1. Input 1. And we're telling it how many characters to bring in. LOF will return the length of the file. So let's say we want all the characters. So this should read the whole file into a single variable. So that gets us a template. Now we've just got to prepare that template for the individual customer that we're working with. So inside our loop, we're going to say message equals replace. This line is going to get really long if we don't kind of break it up in individual variables. So before we get to there, let's read some variables off of the worksheet. So what do we need to be able to send this message? It looks like we're going to need a first name. So first name is in column 2. So let's set this up. We've already got a variable called first name. Yep. First name. equals the sheet we're looking at, column 2. We're going to need a model year. We're going to need a make. That's going to be some column. Model year. What else we got? Make, model year, model name. Model year, make, model name, make system. And let's get started with those.
Failures.
Oh, is failure one of them?
Failure.
Oh, fail year. All right, we'll do fail year while we're at it. We still have a, oh yeah, these will be the ones we're reading out of the data. Fail year equals, now we got to find the right columns for this. So first name's in column 2. We have somebody who wants to tackle the, to tell me where these other ones are. Where's the make? You can tell me the letter if that's easier. I. We'll just put it in as letters. The model year is where? K? J? The model name should be like G.
Model name is J.
J, and model year is K, so IKJ. The system, ooh, system's going to be a little tougher. Because the system comes in a little bit uglier.
We don't have a model year. We have a letter date and a year text.
Yeah, year text is the model year. Why is it called year TXT instead of just year? Probably because year was a reserved word in whatever database this came from. Fail date we'll need to get at. We'll do that shortly. Breaks. So what do we want to say? Where does this go into the letter? Incident. Transportation Safety Bureau is currently evaluating the Cherokee brakes for a possible recall. So that sounds right. So we probably want everything up to the colon here. How do we say everything up to the colon? Oh, what column is that in first? That's M. Okay, so here's where we can split. We've talked about the split. Have we used the split function yet? We can split this whole thing based on some delimiter. What's the delimiter? The colon. Now this will be an array. Be an array that's delimited by, be an array, we've taken that string, we've cut it up into individual elements of the array based on the colon. So we want to tell it which one do we want? The first one. So what do we put here? 0. This seems a little bit weird, but this whole thing evaluates to an array, and then we just say we want the 0th position. That should be everything up to the first colon. And then, let's see, the fail year is in L, but this is a whole date. So what we want is to look at the date, which was, what was it, L?
L.
We've got a capital L. And there's a function called year. I give it a date, and it will give me back the year. If I want to know the year of now, it's 2017. We want to know the year of 1/1/2233. Tell me that's 2233. Close the wrong one. So that should get all my variables set up. Now I'm ready to plug them into the message. So message equals replace the template. Looking at the template, looking for something, replacing it with something. I'm looking for, and it's going to be every single one of these. First name. I'm looking for first name. In fact, before I do that, I'm going to copy this a bunch of times. Ooh, not quite the same. So the first time I'm looking at the template, I'm reading that raw template that I read from the file. I'm going to find something and replace it with something else, put it into message, and then from there on, if I go back to the template, I'm going back to my original. I want to keep replacing the thing that I've been working on. So now I want to find the tag that's first name and replace it with, should we put quotes in there? The variable first name. I've got to make. I want to replace the tag with the variable. That's actually why I made those variable names uppercase, so that I wouldn't have to do as much typing. And it seems like we've got some things at the bottom, agent name and agent phone. Of course, it would be better to actually read these in from a worksheet instead of having them in your code, but you have to get finished at some point today. And we'll put a breakpoint. I'm going to run it right up to here just to make sure it works, and we'll just give you a minute with the code. Model year, model name. Oh. Did I declare a model name? I think I had. Model name. I'm missing an equal sign? Oh, I'm missing the equal sign. Thank you. Have these in opposite order. It seems like this is a little bit backwards. Stand by for a moment, folks, while I look this up. Okay, that looks good. So, folks, I did have something a little bit wrong on the file. So check, make sure these two lines are right. I think I had random. I'm not sure I got to random. That must have auto-filled. But this should be for input as number 1, and then I had the order. I had the order reversed on these two arguments. So it's input. You tell it how many characters, and then the file. And then that should give you a parameterized message. Whew. That's a lot of typing. Let's take a break here and make sure we got this part. We got this. All right, so we've got it now. Here's the message here. Problem with 1992 Cherokee. Now that ultimately has to come into the subject line. But now here's the message. Dear Evelyn, when I heard about the trouble with your et cetera, and all the way down here somewhere. Oh yeah, sincerely, then my name, my telephone number. We're really ready to go. So now I think we're ready to send the message. So let's see what it takes. We print the message. We're printing the first name. I guess we don't have to print the first name anymore because it's part of the message, so I'll get rid of this line. And now let's send the message. Send BYU mail. Now remember, this is going to return a true or false. We want to behave differently depending on how this returns. So let's go ahead and put the if statement. If this, then. All right, so what do we do inside the parentheses? Send to Oh, this is something else we've got to read the data for. Let's get one more variable up here. Let's get email set up here. And the email is in column D. Did I declare a variable called email? Yep. Oh, no, thank you. You're right. So I just want to read whatever's in column D into the variable called email. Whew. And so now that's going to be the send to. Send from, so go ahead and hard code that as whatever email address you use at BYU. Now, have you ever gotten a message, an email message, that purported to be from someone different than it was really from? Correct? Say this is from, your mother. Good heavens, mother, you sent me something I wasn't expecting you to send me. It's asking me to go buy something that you would never ask me to buy. That's because that SMTP, the Simple Network Mail Protocol, was designed for a secure system. It was designed for a network environment where we trust everybody, a trusted system. Folks that you could trust someone if they said it's from me, it was really from them. In fact, it's a separate field that you say who sent the message than from who actually sent it. In fact, you don't even need an email address to send the message. What two pieces of information do we use to authenticate against the server? Yeah, a net ID and a password. We don't have to give it an email address to authenticate to send. And so it's trusting that we are giving it the real email address that we're using. I think we could probably use this service to send email purporting to be from someone that it's not. Don't do that. But that's why this is a separate message. Net ID, which is just username, UN, password, PW. Subject. Oh, the subject. We got to split the subject. So let's find out. Before we get here, do I have a subject? I probably have a subject. Yeah. All right, so before we get here, let's go ahead and pull the subject off. Subject equals something. Before we get to that, we're going to have to know where the first line break is, because we want all the characters up to the first line break. We've got a variable called position that's going to equal the end string, starting at the first character, looking at our message, looking for VB new line. That's just a predefined constant. That's the line continuation. So it's the line termination sequence. It's actually character number 13. Character number 13 followed by character number 10. That's just defined there. That'll be the position of that. So then subject is, we want the left of message. How many characters do we want? Position -1. And then we want our message to be everything after it. Equals the mid of message, position +2. So now I should be able to pass it a subject and a message. So now this is why that first column is blank. The first column on our spreadsheet is going to be the date the message was sent. And so if this thing returns true, then the message got sent. Now, all that really means is that we authenticated against the server and the server accepted the message. Do we know if it really made it through? No. All we know is that the server accepted it for going out. That's something that's good to know. And so I'm going to write to column 1 the current date. That'll tell us the date and time that it dispatched the message. Otherwise, we'll just put the most likely reason is going to be a bad email address. Like just put message failed or something, I'm not sure. At least then we'll know, did it go out? And if so, when it went out. Otherwise, we'll get some flag that tells us that's not good. So I should be able to bring this back up. Oh, let's see, I haven't actually put in my real credentials. So I'm going to stop this, and I'm going to run it again. I'm going to put in my real credentials, because I'm going to try to send the message this time. Ooh, hopefully I still have a breakpoint set. I don't, so hold on. I got to stop this. I want to get a breakpoint sitting around. I don't want it to keep going, especially if the message is no good. So let's try it. ELN2. My real password. Okay, so it went through all of that. Let's see if it liked it. So it says it sent it. It says at least it came back with a authenticated yes. I'll check my email. Usually I have 3 or 4 here because folks have SQL should come through. Problem with your 1990 Jeep Cherokee. Dear Evelyn, I heard about the trouble you had with your 1990 Jeep. I was deeply troubled. I recently assigned your case. This looks pretty good except for what? The Highway Transportation Safety Bureau is currently evaluating the Jeep brakes. Possible recall. Yeah, all this looks really good. So what should I do here for brakes? That's lowercase. So system failure. That's system right here. So let's just where we pull in system. Let's just LCase it. LCASE.
How do you proper it?
Well, you want it in proper case?
Do
we have Evelyn? We have Evelyn. No, Evelyn's in proper case too.
But if we wanted to.
Yeah, so the question is, how do we do proper case? And the answer is, in VBA, you get uppercase, you get lowercase, there's no proper case.
You can do a string conversion.
Oh, that's right, there's a string conversion one that does it. But I think the more reasonable way to do it here is worksheet function. Worksheet, worksheets function. What is it? Worksheet dot function. Yeah, I forgot how to do it.
I think it's just worksheet function.
Oh, there's no dot. It's worksheet function. No. There we go. Worksheet function dot pcase or property. Proper. And that'll put it in proper case. Doesn't do so well at the end. It actually just puts the first letter of each word. All right, so we could patch that, and we could see if this would come in lowercase. And you can run it multiple times. It'll just go through and do it. All right. Questions on what we've done so far? Yes.
So mine says that the subject equals left message positioning -1 has an invalid procedure call or arguments.
Yeah, I had to say that.
You want to make sure that position is set up right. So check this line, and let's help you get these things resolved. So the problems that we're hearing several of you are having is that when we get to this line right here, it's saying that you've got some kind of invalid argument. So hold on for just a second. So if I was to run this line, invalid procedure call or argument, is that what you're getting?
Yeah.
So the most likely cause for that on this line right now is that the position is 0. We're counting on this position figuring out where the end of that first line is. This could be 0 for a couple of reasons. Number one, we have this typed wrong. It's not actually finding where the new line character is. The message could be blank. So if your message is empty, hover over message, and if that's blank, then it's definitely going to give you a 0 for position. If the message is blank, we got to figure out why. So check to make sure your template has something in it, and kind of move from there. While we're working that, I'm going to let this run a little bit longer, and I'm just going to say if r is greater than 4, then exit function, or maybe just then stop. So this will let it run a few times, send out a few messages, and then stop when it gets there. But let's go ahead and see if we can help. Okay, so hopefully we've had a few of these messages come through. Refresh. I think they've come through by now.
I sent it to you. I'm so sorry.
That's right. Okay. So here's the thing we want to do. The other thing we're learning today is how to send a text message. So after this whole thing, this is going to take a while. This could be hundreds of these. When this is done, we want to send a text message. So I'm going to come here after the loop, and we'll just do one more send mail. Now we'll assume that this one's going to work. Send BYU mail. I'm going to put in here. Now here's the trick, is that the email that we're going to send it to is we're going to send it to the email to text gateway of the service provider of the phone. So in my case, I'm going to come to system info, and we're going to see that the gateway for Sprint, which is my provider, is messaging.sprintpcs.com. So that means instead of email, I'm going to put in my phone number, 801-555-1212 at messaging.sprintpcs.com.
Do we need the dashes?
Oh, actually, not only do we not need them, we can't have them. It's a 10-digit number at sprintpcs.com. I'm going to authenticate the same way. This is coming from this address. Username and password to authenticate. The subject is just going to be done. And then the message. Oh, I need the subject for the text message. But I await further orders, master. It's the computer telling me it's done with the work I told it to do. And because I'm not doing anything with the return value and no parentheses, and we'll execute this statement. And we can see that I had to take the hyphens out, but now that actually sends the message to me. Okay.